I really think it starts with the compassion aspect. That's one thing that I always bring it back to and start with a foundation of with my clients is like the compassion, the narratives that we have adapted from other people. How can we shift it? So rather than doing like, I am so grateful, my life is awesome, this affirmation that our body is like, bullshit, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Changing that to like some kind of like a statement of neutrality of like honoring where you are, like, man, life is really hard right now, period. But I'm super thankful for this delicious tea that I get to drink.
Yes.
And that's going to rejuvenate me back to life, period. And so shifting that, finding something, the acknowledgement of where you are, and like it's not a state of denial of saying like, life is great when life feels hard, but then finding something, that moment of hope, that little glimmer of hope. And that hope
Mhm.
is compassion.
Hello, hello, and welcome back to Journey of a Fearless Female. I am your host, Paola Rosser, and this week my guest is Tara. She is a self-love empowerment coach and tarot reader. She's in Sacramento, California. She helps tender-hearted clients overcome people-pleasing, perfectionism, and self-abandonment. Tara guides them to embrace self-compassion, self-trust, and loving self-dialogue. Passionate about cultivating an inclusive and diverse space, Tara advocates for the healing of the self through mental, spiritual, and body integration for maximum alignment and clarity. She encourages her clients to reclaim their agency and autonomy, creating a supportive environment for individuals of all backgrounds. Tara holds a bachelor's degree from Cal State University, Long Beach, and is a graduate of Magdalen University Energy Work and Psychic Reading School. She also has studied tarot with the Van Mystic and taken classes with the esteemed educators such as Dr. Kristen Neff, Pam Grossman, and Robin Rose Bennett. Everybody, please welcome a returning guest, first time ever, Tara.
Hello, I'm so excited to be back. I can't believe I am the first ever returning guest. Like, I feel
Y-
so honored.
Yes. Well, thank you for like reaching back because I sent out an email blast to my past guests and I said, who wants to come back on the show? And I'm so thankful that you're here.
And
Actually, the first
yeah,
time we recorded, you and you didn't have a YouTube. I didn't have a YouTube. So we didn't
no,
have like a visual part of your podcast. So, first of all, I'm so happy you're
it's an
here. Look
honor.
how gorgeous this woman is. I love when she shows up on my For You page
And I'm
on
in my new
TikTok.
home, which is even better. Like, I'm recording
Yes.
my very own office. I love this. Yeah.
I'm like, and so much has changed since the first time you were on the
Yeah.
podcast. How long ago was it? I think it was like almost 3 or 4 years ago.
I want to say it was before, I think it was before my dad passed. So
Mm.
a lot has changed, and especially in terms of my journey as well, because now there is a heavy kind of focus on what I do in terms of grief and how we
Mm.
process grief. And I've always been very heart centric in my practice. Tenderness, sensitivity, like those are things I used to hate so desperately about myself. And part of my practice was helping and starting to process that for myself, but helping others to process like, no, it's a strength. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah.
Um, and then having that be met with this process of like the most vulnerable of vulnerable, losing somebody that I was super close to, still am close to, and having, how do we meet that tenderness and that grief and not feel that shame while we're like, pouring out tears at a random dinner when something comes on the radio and reminds me of my dad. How do we
Yeah.
meet those moments with that love and compassion that we give so often and so freely to other people? So
Yeah.
that has changed quite a bit. And it's interesting because as a heart-centric person, I always am touching my heart because a lot of my love comes from this space.
Mhm.
That grief is still very present here. And it was an interesting perspective shift for me to realize like how much of what is trapped in here and what is stuck in here and what feels heavy here is actually like unresolved grief. And
Mm.
I had an incident where someone was trying to like console me, like, oh my God, your dad died. I'm sorry. Like, oh, let's grieve, blah, blah, blah. But then in the same kind of breath, they said, but I don't understand grief. I've never actually experienced grief. And I just remember feeling so struck by that and like calling bullshit on that, quite honestly, because
Mhm.
I realized I was like, no, actually, that's not true. Like, you might not have lost someone, but we all, on quite a daily basis, experience a form of grief. And it shows up in these really kind of mysterious places. So now being met with the heart centric kind of compassion, tender part, and realizing that grief like goes really hand in hand with that, and having that develop, that has been so
Mm.
so good, so powerful, so hard, so good.
Yeah. Okay, so before we continue, I want to take it back because some of the people who didn't get to watch or listen to your first episode, I want to talk
Mhm.
a little bit about your journey and where did this all begin for you?
Oh my goodness, way back when. So I have always been kind of a heart centric, very tender, very sensitive person. I was called, my mom called me her pink little angel from heaven when I was younger because I was just so sensitive and so like wide-eyed and curious. And through the years, as that developed, it developed into deep shame for feeling that way, for wanting to like not be known as that and wanting to suppress that, to be like strong. Like strength to me was like not showing emotion,
Mm.
being really stoic. And I was in an abusive relationship, and I left my final abusive relationship back in 2013. I had this huge epiphany where I was like, oh my gosh, like I keep dating these really awful men. And why is it that I'm relying so heavily on these men to give me the validation that I feel like I don't have? And
Mhm.
because there was such a wounded part within me that just could not see that love and that beauty for my own self. So I did a lot of like validate me, validate me, validate me, validate me. And not to say that happens in every, abusive relationship, but that was my particular instance, is that I was seeking so much when the seeking needed to come back and land within me. And when I met that last person that I was with, he was very, which is ironic because he was very emotionally manipulative, but also very like Zen and into Buddhism. And his kind of journey sparked a little bit of a like, ooh, interesting to me.
Mhm.
And so when I left him, I was like, bye, but also, wow, thank you for this gift that you gave me, which is to look inside myself a little bit deeper. And so the journey of recovering from that was also realizing like this secret that I had, right? That was in these horrible abusive relationships were not actually like shameful, that it's way more common than people I think understand and realize,
Yeah.
especially for women. And how do we reduce shame is by talking about it, sharing about it, releasing the burden that is within, and finding other people to connect to and go like, oh, me too, like I've been through that. I see
Yeah.
that when you and I talked about that in the last episode of like finding that within each other and like finding strength within each other's stories, and how important that is for us, as especially as survivors of abuse, to which still feels weird to say sometimes,
Mhm.
because I always discredited mine. Mine was more emotional and more psychological. It wasn't actually physical. So I didn't have the things to actually like show for it. It was a lot of it was happening in here. And it took me going and volunteering to a women's shelter to actually realize like, oh my God, I was abused. Like,
Yeah.
oh my God, I did not realize. I thought it was just some guy being an asshole to me. And really
Mm.
but it was so much more.
Yeah, I think that you're minimizing the fact that you were emotionally, because
Yeah.
I think emotional abuse is far worse than physical abuse, because I tell people the scars heal,
Right.
the hair grows back, the bruises fade, but the emotional abuse is what stays with you the
Mhm.
longest. Because I was emotionally abused by my mother, and I had emotionally abusive boyfriends, not husband, sorry, my husband's amazing. Emotionally abusive boyfriends, and physically, my mom was both physically abusive, and so were a couple of my boyfriends. But like that, like, I don't remember a lot of it. I blocked out, but I do remember all their words. and the
Yep.
things that they said. And those are the things that I replayed for years and years and stayed in
Yep.
my own prison of, of my own making, because I was so stuck in that rhetoric of what they tried to make me believe who I was.
Mm,
And so, we can never downplay the emotional abuse because it is just as bad. And
mm,
actually, there's been studies shown that like there's, the worst type of abuse is neglect. It's not
mm,
it's not even physical, it's not sexual, it's not emotional. It's just completely neglecting the
yep.
child, the adult, the human. That is the worst type of abuse. And
Mm,
so, we think there's all these levels of abuse. I just did a TikTok about financial abuse, but either all of them are things that are we could learn from. And I love that you said if we talk more about it, we can
mm,
release the shame that surrounds it. Like I just watched this documentary of this girl who was sexually abused, and
mm,
she was trying to talk to her mother, her grandmother, her great grandmother, her aunts, and all of them
oof,
had been abused sexually and by a member of the family. And so they all kept it a secret and lived in their own personal shame.
yeah.
And then the daughter who's actually uncovering this, she throughout the documentary, she's like, do you understand the pain you could have like saved me from if you would have just talked about this?
Wow.
If we were all open about this one person in the family, and if we could all had this open conversation of what he did rather than protecting him and
Mhm,
protecting the family, and
mhm.
like, you know what I mean? It's like we have all these weird old ideologies that we have to stay quiet on the things that have happened to us, and it's
Right.
like we don't. And if
Mm,
you, like you said, I love that you said that, if you share your story, not
mm,
only do you take away some of the shame from yourself and you take away the power of that story that it
mhm.
has over you, but you also allow someone else who's watching you to hear like, hey, this just doesn't happen to me, it happens to everybody, and there's nothing wrong with me, and I didn't bring it upon myself. It's just part of the learning experience here as a human on this
Mm.
planet, but still, like, if we could talk about it, you no longer have to be the victim of your story. You could be the hero of your story.
Yes. Oh, yeah. And that power perspective, that shift, the
Mm-hmm.
agency that you take back when you change that mindset. And that's a lot of what I work on with my clients is mindset, perspective shifts. You were talking about, it reminded me of like the narratives, right? That we have that, okay, so we've adopted that I was emotionally neglected as a kid as well. So that narrative that I've now taken of like emotions, I actually just posted a TikTok about this of like emotions are stupid, like you're over dramatic, you're too sensitive, and like okay, and now that's part of my brain's way of processing thinking. That's my train of thought because it sounds like it's my voice, it's coming from inside my head. I can hear myself saying it to myself when really that voice is not even ours to begin with. Yeah, it
Mm-mm.
sounds like your own voice, but like that's it didn't come from you. So reshifting those roots that were planted as your foundational or core beliefs and then rerouting that up to say like, wait a minute, this is a weed, I don't want this weed.
Yes. Let's pull that shit out of there.
This doesn't belong here, hell no.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so let's talk about, I know this is a sensitive subject because I am part of the DDC, the Dead Dads Club. So
Oh,
I understand. I understand, yeah, a membership that I did not want.
yeah, we should get like a little like handshake or some kind of
Yeah, you know who made that
medallion.
comment? Heather McMahon, not Heather. Is it her last name? Heather McMahon. She's a comedian, and
Oh,
she talks
yeah.
about openly about when her father passed away. She loved her dad. She has a podcast, and I love her. She's such an incredible human, and she's on TikTok finally. And anyways, but she talks about her father's passing. She said, "Yeah, I'm part of the DDC. I never asked him for a membership of the Dead Dads Club, but it is the feeling of losing a parent is something that you can't even like verbally describe. It's like so hard to even talk about sometimes. I've talked about like my father's death and everything. Every time I even bring up the notion, I get a little bit emotional.
Yeah.
I personally have had my own like journey of grief and healing, and I first of all, like I love that you said earlier, you're like, I still connect with him. I still connect with my
Mhm.
dad too as well. So take
Oh,
us back to that day, what happened? how you
Yeah.
started going through the emotions, your thought processes. So here we go.
Yeah. So my dad died in December 26th, 2021. So the day after Christmas, like that was the
Oh,
first, which is ironic and like also comical because my dad was like the king of holidays. Like
mm,
we used to call him like the Griswold, like from Christmas Vacation, because my dad was like holidays, like he made such a big deal out of every holiday. Like
yes.
downstairs for our birthdays, and like the downstairs would be decorated in balloons and all that jazz. So Christmas was like the holiday of holidays for him. And so it's ironic that he died, like, and now we have this death that's connected to Christmas.
Mm-hmm.
One thing that is very tragic and also very comical is so one thing that he kept saying in the hospital was like, but all the presents, I have all the presents, they're in the garage,
Mm,
all the presents. And we were like, Dad, it doesn't matter, like you're gonna come home, it's fine, we'll open them when you're done, when you're, out of here. And we came home, or we were at home on the 27th, I think it was. And we were all kind of just like my brother, my sister-in-law, my nephews, my husband, we were all talking about Dad. And we were like, oh my God, the presents. So we go into the garage, and in this corner, he had like put a tarp over them. And underneath the tarp was just we used to call him an elf on crack. Like he would go crazy and order stuff and be like, like, and so all these presents were there. And so we're like laughing and trying to figure out who the presents belonged to, but like crying at the same time. It was such a special kind of way to like really celebrate my dad. My dad in 2018, yeah, was diagnosed with prostate cancer, stage 4
mm,
prostate. So have it for life, but not like the kind of thing that would necessarily take him out at that moment. He went through radiation. It was inoperable because of what had happened in terms of the growth. And so basically the only kind of solution to this was to give him radiation. He went through what's called I think I'm remembering it correctly, brachytherapy, which
mm,
was a newer kind of form of radiation where they like just radiate the hell out of you. And that reduces the amount of radiation that you actually have to go seek out. So like rather than going through like, I think it was like 9 weeks of radiation. I don't know if these timelines are proper or correct. His radiation was like only 4 weeks. So it was like,
mm,
speed it up, like let's hit that hard and let's go, which is ironic because at the time we thought like we're doing this really awesome thing. And that's ultimately kind of what led to his final passing. So
mm.
he was in remission, his numbers went down, his PSA levels were great. We were like, oh my God, like he's free and clear of this. COVID hit, of course, ironically, like now you're healthy-ish and like you can be around people and now you can't. So he had to spend ultimately like the last year and a half of his life, like kind of secluded because he really didn't want to get COVID to reignite anything that would potentially harm him because his immune system was so fragile. So my mom, December, like, gosh, like I want to say 15th or like 12th or 11th or something like that, went into the hospital for her own issues. So it was like mayhem. She was in the
Mm,
hospital. Dad wasn't feeling great. And I was actually just thinking about this last night. You don't realize like in the moment you realize like this is special, but then you see the bigger picture and you're like, oh no, that was like
very
the
special.
yeah. So it was his birthday. He wasn't feeling well. We didn't know why he wasn't feeling well, but he wasn't feeling well. We thought, oh, maybe he's sick, maybe he has COVID. Oh my God. So he was alone on his birthday, and I went to their house to
Hmm.
make dinner. And so we sat together at like 9 o'clock at night eating dinner. Like I made a frozen PF Chang's meal, and like we just sat there and laughed. And he was like, I have something for you. I want to give this to you now. It's a Christmas gift. And I was like, Dad, it's your birthday. Like, you shouldn't be giving me anything. Why are you giving me a gift? We were going to a wedding in January in Southern California. And he was like, I want us to go to Disneyland. I got us tickets to
Oh,
Disneyland. So he gave me the tickets on his birthday, which thinking at that time, it was like, did he know? Did he know? Because if he had not done that and not printed them out, we would have had no idea that he bought those tickets.
yeah.
So it just is too ironic. Like I think a part of him maybe knew something was up but we
Mhm.
didn't know what. And so he ended up going into the hospital actually the day after my mom got released from her
Mm.
stay. That was fun. So going and taking care of him, it came very, very fast. Like we didn't really have any time to like truly process what had happened.
Mm.
He was very sick. He went to urgent care by himself. Feels so horrible and guilty about that to this day. And right, we can't like take ownership over that, but there's little things that add up. I'm sure you understand of like, if only I had known or
Yes.
done, and passed out in urgent care. Thankfully, the urgent care was right next to the hospital. They rushed him over. He was not doing well. He had a pretty strong infection.
Mm.
And the infection had actually come from the port that they had to put in for him to be able to go to the bathroom because
Mm.
the therapy had ruined his ability to basically go to the restroom on his own. And that, if not taken care of properly, I mean, just anything could happen to cause infection. He didn't realize that he had an infection and had sepsis.
Mm.
So that developed into a lung infection, which then developed into, oh my God, your dad has non-Hodgkin's lymphoma.
Oh my gosh.
They had done a scan on him a month prior. Like that's part of the deal with the cancer, to make sure like it's not spreading. They had done a scan, everything looked flawless. He looked great. They didn't see any like other cancers developing. And they were like, we literally don't know where this came from. This is poof out of thin air. So his oncologist, I mean, talked to Harvard, talked to like all the big medical schools around the country. And basically everyone was like, we don't know. So with the combination of his infection, with this newly developed cancer, with everything else that was happening, his body just couldn't process it or handle it. And he passed about what day that was, like, I want to say about like 5, 6 days later while in the hospital.
Mm.
And it's funny because like at that time, I was still trying to work. And thankfully, my employer at the time, because I was not yet self-employed fully, they were like, just take the time that you need. And having that grace of someone saying like, this work does not matter. Go be with your dad. That was like the best gift anyone could have given me at that time, because I was the only one who really was in the hospital with him during that time. It was limited access, so not a lot of people could come in and out because of COVID. So I was his person. And caregiving my dad in that time of like, wiping away stains, what his port had like erupted. I mean, not to go into too much of graphic detail, but it's no wonder that I have PTSD because of this, because I saw so much that, after he passed, it was like, what do I do with this? I
Mm.
saw things that no daughter should have to see about their dad or
Yeah.
their anyone. And so that's been my process of healing, is like acknowledging. And like the other day, I had a flashback and I was like, that's okay. That's okay. You will
Yeah.
have flashback self, and talking myself through that process. And the memory of him just is lingering so strong these days. And I just find it funny that we've moved into the space, and like I'm mowing my lawn for the first time ever. And like
Mhm.
this, my dad would have helped me through the process of, and like channeling him and just like, dad, like, thank you so much for helping me with this. Or like, I know that you're here, has been so special. And I want to thank you. This is not a story I get to share or talk about a lot. Like, not a lot of people go like, tell me what happened to your
Oh,
dad.
I love these stories.
Really awesome. I do
I
too.
love these stories. I am so obsessed with um I know it sounds weird, but I'm obsessed with death and what happens to the other side. I ever since my dad passed, like I remember seeing him there in the hospital bed, and
Mhm.
then they told us it was a code blue, walked us back in, and it was just a vessel. It wasn't him anymore.
Oh,
And so, like, I was in that process of like, where did he go? He was just here. We were just talking. He was just laughing, and he's gone. Like,
Mm.
And, growing up Catholic, like I was taught to believe that if you were a sinner, you're going to hell. And so like my mind was just like, I can't imagine my dad being tortured for the rest of his life or eternity,
Yeah.
and I just went down the rabbit hole and like have watched so many near death experiences and have listened to so many books and authors of people who've actually crossed over and
Mm.
have come back. And I don't have a fear of death anymore. I don't have a fear of hell anymore. I know that we are all energy beings. We don't ever cease to exist.
Mhm.
It can't be created nor destroyed. We're
Mhm.
just constantly just moving through this beautiful dimensional place called Earth. And so
Uh,
I've had vivid dreams of my dad. He's
okay.
come to visit me. He's told
Yeah.
me, "Hey, I'm okay. Don't worry about me." And there's so many times where he just shows up in a beautiful, either a white butterfly or a hummingbird, or he's
Yeah.
always constantly showing me signs. And I know that there's nothing to be afraid of with death. Yes, grief is the hardest thing to have as a human to have to
Mhm.
experience,
Mhm.
and like I love that you said grief comes in so many forms. If
Yeah.
you've been broken up with, grief
Yeah.
is there.
Yeah.
Even like as my stepson is now 17, I grieve over my little 8-year-old stepson that I'm never
Yeah,
going to see again.
and that's the other thing too. Yeah, grief shows up in good things as well. And it's like, well, this is good, right?
Yes.
I should feel. And then that messes with our psyche even more, like that pressure of like, well, no, you should be joyful, right? But no, no, no. Like joy
Yeah.
and grief can totally coexist. It doesn't have to be one or the other.
Yeah, exactly. Like I have so much joy in the fact that I had all those good years with my little,
Yeah.
stepson and even my little nephews as I'm watching them grow up. Like I miss their little faces, but it's
Yeah.
just all part of the human experience. And what I wish we had more of is these conversations
Mm.
surrounding grief.
Mhm.
Because I think that, and even I just watched this movie, The Claw, which is like on Netflix, and
Mhm.
it's kind of like based on true events or whatever, but it's like four brothers that are wrestlers and they say that they have a curse. And so they're constantly saying like the family has a curse, the family has a curse. And so slowly the brothers start dying or killing themselves. And as like the second or the third brother dies, the dad is like, "No tears from you. Nobody's going to cry in this house. No one's going to see us cry. Take off those sunglasses." And it's like, I hate that. Like that like struck a chord with me because it's like you're allowed to feel sad for
Mhm.
the person that has passed. You're allowed to cry. You're allowed to scream. You're allowed to get angry at God. You're allowed to feel all the feelings that come with grief. There
Yeah.
is no right or wrong way to go through this journey. Go
Precisely.
ahead.
Yeah, no, and the even the not feeling like I have a client who we talked about this because what's wrong with me? I'm not feeling anything. Okay, like let's remove the notion that you have to feel, period. But
Mhm.
let's also remove the notion that you have to follow a structure. That's the
Yes.
thing that I've learned the most that I keep reiterating over and over and over again. That has been so monumental to me. What my therapist was teaching me at the time is like, let go of all the rules. There are no
Mhm.
rules. And the minute that you can start to recognize like this is a sacred experience for just you and you will handle it different than other people, then that alleviates again the shame, but it alleviates this like box that we tend to put ourselves in. And I think like even, it still strikes me. This was my third Father's Day without my dad. And I broke down harder, I think, this year than I did last year. And it struck me as like, what's wrong with me? No, 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 nothing's wrong with me. That voice doesn't actually belong to me of the shame. That's a perspective from other people that will maybe judge me about my grief process. How can
Mhm.
I normalize this and validate this? And it's really like I had a life coach who was so monumental in my work around this. And she said, like, share your vulnerability, share this experience. People need to hear this. And the more that I am like, I don't give a flying truck if you are uncomfortable with this. This is my process. I'm not going to try to force this upon people and make them uncomfortable. But if my tears are uncomfortable to other people, then don't watch me cry. Don't watch me cry.
Right?
You know what I mean? Like I'm not going to suppress the feeling of missing my dad for the sake of making other people feel comfortable. And when we remove
Yes.
that feeling of like we're indebted to make other people feel comfortable in our grief process, and when we remove that, oh my God, the freedom and the agency and the just the release and the confidence that come from that are so
Yeah,
powerful.
exactly.
Yeah.
It
And to,
is. I love that you said that because everybody grieves differently.
right.
Everyone does. And
Yeah.
like I definitely there are no rules. We've created our own rules, our own ideologies, our
All made
own
up.
like it's all
Yeah.
made up. It's all made up. Who said that we couldn't cry? Who said that we have to wear black? Who said that we have to, I
Yes.
remember one time my brother was in the hospital and I was really worried about my brother. And I called one of my sisters and I was just like, it just makes me so mad that he's not prepared. Like and
Mm.
this is another thing because I witnessed my very first death at 10 years old. And
Ooh.
then after 10, it was like my brother-in-law died, then my other brother-in-law died, and then my cousin died, and then my dad died, and then my grandmother died, and then my uncle died. It was just like one after the other, death after death after death.
Yeah.
And it really, when I was younger, I was so afraid of death. I was so afraid that
Mhm.
I was always waiting. Who's the next person that's going to die? Which it sucks at like a young age, always thinking that, like, who's the next person that's going to die? And I hated that feeling. But I also remember just like all the logistics of everything.
Mm.
When my father passed away, he didn't have a life insurance policy. He
Oh, yeah.
didn't have, he didn't
Yep.
have a will. He didn't have anything lined up. And so here we are struggling to like put together
Yeah.
$700 a piece per
Yep.
child so that we couldn't even bury him. We had to cremate him. But yes, like we have these things that like I worry about, like making sure you have a life insurance policy, making sure you've told your family like what you want done. Do you want to be cremated? Do you want to be buried? Where do
Right.
you want to be buried? What do you want people to do for the ending? Like that's the one thing is that we're all guaranteed death.
Yes.
And nobody knows when
Mm.
it's going to happen. Like I tell my clients that you need to have a life insurance policy, not
Mhm.
just on yourself, but all of your children. What do you mean? Oh my God, that's so no,
No,
it's being
it's life.
preventive,
It's life.
because you never know when it's your turn. You never
Right.
know. You literally never know. And everything should be so that the process of grief is already hard enough, but to have to think of the logistics while you're sitting there and your heart is literally
Yes.
pouring out of your ass,
Yes. It's
you
true.
don't want to think about these things.
Oh my God. And it's so emotionally taxing to sit with someone and like sign documents, as we did that with my mom. Like they didn't have a trust or a will or anything. So we set up a living trust and like sitting in there and signing documents, or even the documents that came from like, you are officially widowed, like the house is now officially yours. Like you don't know how that's going to affect you. It's a very taxing on so many levels. Yeah. So having that readiness, having that preparedness, and we, unfortunately, a lot of us don't have that until it's too late. And then the
Yeah.
people that are left are like, I don't know what to do with this. Oh my God, write down
Yeah.
your password, please, for the love of God. Like trying to get into like his email and say, oh my God.
I
Anyway,
know.
but yeah, that I love that you're talking about that side. It's the emotional side, but we also have to have that readiness in terms of like the logistical side, because the logistical side, with if that's done, will help with the emotional processing 10 times faster, or 10 times better, I should say. But I like that you're talking about death is okay. That's been a journey for me of like trying to befriend death. What is it to, because of the things that I saw and experienced with him. I'm getting over it. White coat syndrome. I couldn't
Mm.
go to the doctor by myself after, because I just was like, oh my God, like that fear, like the PTSD of everything. My husband going with me to appointments, like just to get my like medication adjusted, and having that anxiousness. I had a really big epiphany. I was listening to a podcast about grief, and they were talking about like the process of kind of befriending it. And I realized, like, wait a minute, I'm actually afraid of death because I'm afraid of all the things that I haven't done. But
Mm.
why do I feel like the things that I have done aren't good enough to end on? And
Mm.
it came from a feeling of lack. Like I don't think that I have accurately like celebrated and cherished all the cool stuff. Like this is cool what we're doing right now.
Yeah.
Like me sitting and looking out this beautiful street in front of me, that's amazing. Like I can find contentment with where I am in my life and be like, you know what, I'm good. Yes, of course, there's things we want to do, and like Of course, there's many things on my list of like, bucket list, but if I can celebrate the fact that my life has been amazing and awesome as it is, and that I don't really truly need to do or seek or to have anything else, then that will give me the comfort knowing like, I'm good. I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah.
So
Yes.
that's been my individual process with befriending death. I'm not totally there yet. I'm not like, woohoo, like, come on in. But there's a part of me that's like, I see you. I recognize you. You're actually very sacred and very valued.
Mhm.
And the lessons that I've learned from you, Death, have been so monumental in my life that I actually feel gratitude for you coming into my world. What? That's
Yes.
wild to think. But the lessons that I've learned about myself, about having this conversation, you and I being able to talk about this, the wisdom that you and I have gained, and everyone who's part of that club is so, it's just so life changing. And to now
Yes.
understand and empathize and be able to relate to people who have lost people. Before it was like, oh, that's sad, that really sucks, oh my God. But now it's like, I see you, I get
Mm.
you, I have that feeling. You and I are connected for life now because we are part of this club that unfortunately we had to sign up for without our kind of consent.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm further down the journey than you are because
Yeah.
yours is super close, but like it took me years,
Mm.
years to get to this place where not only do I love death, I embrace death, I'm excited for my own like transition. Like I don't fear death anymore. I used to because I'm telling you, growing up, it was like
Yeah.
one death after another. I had no clue where people went. My religious background told me that people were either going to go to heaven or hell. I don't believe that anymore. I've gone down the rabbit hole of near death experiences, which really brought me so much comfort and so much
Mm.
clarity to listen to people. This is what I tell people who are like super religious and they're trying to get me to go back to church. Not going to happen. But they tell me like, "Oh my God, you need to go back to church and blah blah blah." They're going to tell you, and I'm like, "Why would I go and speak to someone who's never been to Disneyland? Like, how are they
Mm.
going to tell me what to expect, what rides to go, who is going to be there?" I would rather talk to people who've actually been to Disneyland
Ooh,
and experienced the divine and
yeah.
have come back to tell me about it. That's why I love near death experiences because
Yeah.
they have truly been to the other side, experienced all the wonder that's on the other side, and have
Mhm.
brought back these beautiful messages.
Mm.
I'm telling you, Tara, I have listened to thousands upon thousands of stories and
Mm.
read many books of the other side, and I don't fear it anymore. I am
Mm.
thankful that my father went quickly and he
Mm.
didn't have to suffer. Like right now, my father-in-law and my mother-in-law are both in memory care.
Oh gosh.
And when I see them there, it breaks my heart to know that their end of life is just this non-existence. And it's sad that your dad also had to be in a state of kind of limbo for a
Yeah.
year because of COVID and not being able to like,
Yeah.
because like we said earlier in the podcast, neglect is the worst form of abuse. So
Mhm.
COVID just like had us all being neglectful of one another and had
Mm.
poured over all this fear on us to like stay away from each other when we're so vibrantly electrical, beautiful souls that we need each other. Like we need each other's energy. We thrive off of each other's
Yeah.
frequencies, and it's sad that we were separated in that time. And it's sad that you missed that opportunity to spend those times. But
I
I get that feeling that you had when my dad passed, like, oh God, I can't even tell you how many nights I was pissed at myself because I didn't
Mhm.
go to the hospital and I didn't talk to the doctors and I didn't say this or I should have
Yeah.
taken him here. And you kill yourself with the shoulda, woulda, coulda.
Yeah.
But I also love, do you ever watch the medium Teresa Caputo?
Yes. Oh, I love her.
I love her, and watching her shows after my dad passed where she's channeling the loved ones, they're all saying the same thing. "I'm not mad at you. It's
No.
okay that you didn't go. Don't worry about it." Like,
Yes.
I'm so
Good.
they're in such bliss on the other side. They have no time to be mad at you for not being there.
100%. I'm okay. So have you seen The Good Place? Have you seen the very
Yes, the
show?
show?
Yes, the
Yes,
very
yes.
last episode,
I
not
haven't watched the last episode, but go ahead and tell me because I'm
okay, okay. Well, spoiler alert, they all kind of like, I mean, for lack of a better description, they all kind of quote unquote like die, that like their souls are released. And it's, oh my God, you'll sob through the whole thing. But they're like little like specks and like freckles and like bubbles of like light and energy that are like kind of floating around. So my husband and I were in Tahoe a couple weeks ago, and I was laying on the beach, and all these like little particles from the tree were floating, and they all were white. And I was like, that's it. And I was like crying, and I was
oh,
like, that's what it is. Like we are these, oh, I'm going to get tears in my eyes now. We are all these like little particles. So beautiful.
it
Oh,
is. It's
so beautiful.
absolutely beautiful. Like,
Yeah.
but yes, we are all fragments of the one, of the
Yeah.
divine, of source, and like I said, like I listen to so many near death experiences and I watch so many
Mm,
of these people and they tell their stories of what happened on the other side, and I listen to mediums and I listen to, they're in complete bliss. And I've had actually dreams of my father,
oh,
where I have had, one time I remember I was like in my deep grief and I was crying, and I was
mm,
just worried that he was in hell because that's what I was taught, And I remember I had this vivid dream where he's in this garden and he's super far away, and he's like, and this garden is just gorgeous. Like, think of like Avatar, and all the colors are so bright and you can't even describe it with the words here. And he's like far away and he's like, I'm okay. Don't worry about me,
he's like, I'm gardening. Good luck. Like,
Yes, I'm having the best time over here. And I've also one time where I was in a deep dark night of the soul and I was drinking NyQuil to just sleep the day away, and I cried myself to sleep that night, and I woke up mid dream, and my I was living in a small studio apartment and the door opened up and my father walked in perfectly perfect, because my dad died of liver disease, so he had no teeth and he was really skinny and he was like really not in a good place. But when he walked in my front door of my studio apartment, he was perfect. And I jumped out of the bed and I went and I gave him a hug, and I was like, Papi, quiero ir contigo, which means, Dad, I want to go with you, because I was just in this dark place. I did not want to be here anymore because I just felt like I just couldn't figure out this thing called life
same.
back
I
then.
get that.
And
Yeah.
I was just kind of like, I want to go with you. And he was like, it's not your turn. And then he was like, don't worry, everything's going to get better.
Mm,
And I woke up from my dream and I was like I was gasping for air. And for a long time, I questioned myself, like, was it a dream? Did he really come and visit me? Was it real? And I've talked to so many like shamans and healers, and they all say the same thing. It's what is real to you. Whatever
yes.
felt real to you is real.
Yeah.
And it really, and I just listened to another near death experience over the weekend as I was like sewing my curtains. And I
Yeah.
was listening to it, and she died and came back, and she said, yes, your loved ones can visit you during your
Yeah.
dreams. And if you've had one, then yes, they have. And I was like, this solidifies that it was true and it was real. And my dad did come and visit me, and he did let me know everything was
I
good.
100% believe that. I am of the camp of like, yes, 100%. And yes, if it's true for you, feels real for you, who am I to say it's not real? Like, what's the purpose of that? If you feel connected and you feel like joyful that like your dad is still there, what is the purpose of me telling you like, no, you're wrong? It's only to
Mm.
hurt you. It's not to like honor your sacredness with your relationship. I had a dream, a nightmare. It was a nightmare of my dad was in distress. He was dying, and it was tragic. And I woke up because I had tears in my eyes while I was crying in my dream. But the reason I woke up was I had a picture of my dad and I hanging on my wall by my bed. And I woke up to the sound of glass shattering. His picture with me had fallen off of the wall, broke me
Wow.
out of that nightmare, and shattered on the floor. And my husband and I were just in such disbelief. I was like, my dad brought me out of that nightmare.
Yes, because he didn't want you to have that dream.
No, no, 100%. And I mean, I couldn't fall back to sleep after that because I was just like, he's here. Oh my God, that was him saying, like, no, 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 that is not the case. And there's been so many moments of like, I see lights flashing. I always know that that's my dad. I see hummingbirds, like you said. I see this, I see that. I smell his, cologne. I have moments of just like, he is here with me. It's such a good connection to the relationship we still have. Like our relationship did not absolve. I still
Mm-mm.
have a relationship with my dad. Hey, dad, I'm going to mow the lawn today. What the hell am I supposed to do? Like
Yeah.
talking to him and establishing that. And if we can still, I think that's one of the things that is really most important. You know, even the moments where I have a kind of a flashback and I have like, ugh, that's a horrific memory. And then I have to like also at the same, I don't have to, I choose to at the same time go, thank you. Like, I see you, I
Yes.
hear you, you're here with me. Thank you for saying hi. Remember that time that you were in the hospital and I got to tell you before you passed that, you know, Harpo and my husband are going to go to Disneyland in your honor and have fun, and how you laughed, even though you weren't quite conscious, you still laughed at that. And like the things that happened during those moments that are still like, that's gratitude. Like that is a moment
Yes.
of gratitude. Yes, it's sadness, but like if I can take that and turn it into a moment of gratitude, I take back the ownership over that grief. That grief does not own me. I am a part of that grief. I own the grief. I have control over that grief, quote unquote. But like I can reframe it in a way that is loving rather than tragic. That's strength.
Yes.
That's strength.
And on the other side, there is no time. It like time is not of it's like it's a human construct. And so like in a lot of the near death experiences that I listened to, they said that, you know, they felt like they were over there for like months. And then they
Yeah.
would wake up and they would be like, "Oh, you were only dead for 8 minutes." And they're like, "What?" I felt like I was like over there forever, you know? And then also they've also said like when they meet their loved ones that have passed, they're not sad that you're not there. They're not missing you because there is no time over there. So for them,
Yeah.
they're like, "Oh, she'll be here next Monday. Oh, she'll be here on Tuesday. Oh,
I've heard
she's
that
going to be here in 10 minutes, you know, because there's no time over there." And then for us, it's like 50, 60 years on this side. And we're
too.
like, we just miss and we want to be with them. But the thing is that you don't have to miss them that much because they're always with you. And I tell that to people who are ready to hear that because some people aren't ready in their grief journey. I tell they're always with you. And if you want to connect with your mom, your grandmother, your dad, your uncle, whatever, just say their name out loud and say, "Can you show me that you're here? Send
Yeah.
me ABC." And they will. And it's always like this funny way of them connecting with you. You know, like you
Always.
said, you could be at the diner and then the song that reminds you of them comes on the radio. That's them showing I'm still with you. You know,
Yeah.
I've read so many where they like drop a penny or all of a sudden a picture of them shows up on your phone, or even like I'm getting goosebumps. Even like sometimes people can get text messages from their
Mhm.
cell phones where they're like, "How did their dead cell phone that's in the drawer hasn't
Right.
had a charge send me a text message?"
Right.
Because it's just energy never ceases to exist. They're just
100%.
in a completely different dimension, and the veil is getting thinner, I think.
I agree
And I
100%.
and I think like a lot more people are connecting, and I think that we're all now being more open about it, and no one's being afraid of saying, "Hey, I had the spiritual experience," because now we're all kind of like, "Yeah, this is real." You know,
And
when
again,
before it was like,
yeah.
"You're a witch. We're gonna burn you at the stake."
Thank you. Yes. So none of that. But yeah, it's removing the shame that there's something wrong. And again, it's the recognition that like this is not bad, it's not sinful, it's not shameful. It's actually quite powerful and loving to like, oh, my dad came to me in a dream, and to share that with people and to take ownership of like that makes me feel better. I believe this to be true. It's not delusional because I'm not out there like causing harm to anyone or hurtful. It's healing. It's
Mhm.
transformative. And it's that continuing of connection, relationship. If we continue to believe like that person is with me, is around me, I can talk to them. Yes, I can't see them, but that does something to our emotional state that is not, can't be found in therapy, can't be found in like meditation, can't be found in like, you know, any coping mechanism. It's just found within.
Yeah.
So powerful, so beautiful. What was your
Um,
dad's
my dad's name was Hector.
Hector? Well, how old were you when he
I
passed?
was 26. I
Yeah.
was 26. I remember it clearly because that year was like the hardest year of my life. In January, I had gotten out of a toxic, abusive relationship. Like I finally said it's over because he was laying his hands on, and everything was always behind closed doors, you know? And this was the first time that somebody walked in and
Mm,
watched him like lunge at me. And the look on her face made me think, I'm the idiot in that Lifetime movie. Like I'm the one that I scream at saying, "Why are you still with him? Get the hell
Yeah.
away from him," you know? And the look on her face was like my catalyst and my aha moment to say, "This is not love. I need to get
Mm,
out of here." So I had gotten out of that toxic relationship in January. So I was grieving that relationship
yeah.
and I was in my own head, in my own grief. And my dad was complaining that he had painful pains on his side because his
Mm,
liver was failing. He'd been an alcoholic all of his life. And I remember my sister called from at work and she was like, "You need to come to see dad," because I'm one of seven. I have one sister who passed away before I was born. And I was like, "You guys can go." Like, whatever my dad's going through in my mind, I'm like, whatever my dad's going through is nothing compared to the pain that I'm going through. Right.
mm,
But I'm thankful that my sister said, "No, you have to come."
mm,
And I took half a day off of work. We drove in a minivan down to this hospital in Moreno Valley, and I talked to my dad. I remember the conversations I had with him. Oh,
yeah.
I remember everything he said. I wish I could have recorded his voice, but I didn't.
You know, I feel that way too.
And just everything that we talked about, I still carry it in my heart. And
Yeah.
like one of the things that he said was like, "You don't have any kids. You should travel the world." Because
Mm.
and he would tell me, he's like, "I worked my ass off for money and I'm dying with $20 in my pocket." And he's
Oh.
like, "And I've only seen Mexico and Southern California." And he goes, "You don't have any kids, travel the world and don't let money be the factor that you work your ass off all your whole life." And after my dad passed away, I went to Italy, I went to Mykonos, I went to, I've been to Bora Bora and Fiji and, Tahiti, and I've been all over. And I remember specifically being on the shores of the beach in Mykonos and looking at the beautiful moon and the stars. And I was like, "I
Mm,
did it, Poppy. Can you see it? Can you see it? I'm here. I've traveled. I'm doing the things that you told me to do." And it's just been a wonderful experience to like still connect with my father and still
mm.
see that he's like around me and that he's proud of me and that I did the things that he couldn't do and he gets to live them out through me.
Yeah, and
And
he is. I heard a very strong, like, yes, when you said it, "Can you see me?" It was like, yes. I feel the presence of your dad and my dad here. Like, I think that they're a very strong presence of them with us during this conversation. And
yeah.
I feel like my dad has been a good catalyst in connecting me to the right people, of like pushing me in the direction. Like, one of my closest friends, we didn't become like super close until right after my dad died. And
Mm.
that relationship has been so transformative, because I told my friend, I was like, "I feel like you came into my life because my dad said, 'Here, baby girl, like you need a little bit of help. You need somebody to really walk you through this process.'"
Oh yeah.
Our dads are here like helping us talk to and connect and relate to each other in a way that we maybe could have kind of formed before, but now, like, because we have this connection to each other through this club that we're a part of,
Yeah.
now
The
share that.
DDC.
The BBC, right? And thank you to Hector for now making, because I the other day was like, should I go on this trip? And I've been hemming and hawing, and I feel like this is a little bit of a sign for me to be like, yeah, go on that trip. Plan for that trip to go to Costa Rica, a place I've never been outside the country. It's time.
Mhm.
It's time to go outside. It's time to do this. It's time to
Yeah.
do life a
Well,
little bit.
before my dad, like I was trying to go to Hawaii for my senior year and I had so much fear because like,
Sure.
my mom really poured in a lot of fear. She had mostly girls. She only had one boy and she was always worried that everybody's trying to like molest us or rape us and stuff.
Mm,
So I always had this fear like if I went to another country or and Hawaii is not even another country, but I
right?
had so much fear that I was going to get raped and murdered. And so like I never went. I wanted to go to Australia also, never. Well, I ended up going for my 40th birthday, but because my husband took me. And I remember like the first time I went to Hawaii or the first time I went to Australia, I was like, what the fuck was I so afraid of? What
That
was I so afraid of?
That.
You
So that
know?
back to the narrative of, right, of the things that we collect. Like, I use this analogy with a client. It's like putting on, okay, this fur coat, this fur coat, this idea of life belonged to my mom. I'm going to put that on. Okay, this plaid coat that belonged to my dad is this idea that I can't do this. This idea of this belongs to so and so. And so you just pile on all these freaking coats, right? And you're sweating. You're like, oh my God, this is so heavy. Like, I don't want to get up because I'm just piled in coats of all these past thoughts, ideas, beliefs. And were valid and true probably for your mom. And that fear came from a very real place, but it wasn't your fear. But unfortunately, like, you sucked it up. You put
Yeah.
the coat on and identified that as your own thing. Once we start to take those coats off and feel that freedom, I'm like, oh my God, I'm not sweating anymore. I can like move and breathe. That's because we're letting go of those ideas and notions that this thing that your mom felt to be true and honest and was true and honest for her doesn't have to be true and honest for you in your
Yeah.
lifetime.
And
So
I'm
you
also grateful that my mom cared for me enough
oh,
to
hell
like,
yeah.
I never got molested. I
Thank
never got
you.
raped. Thank the Lord Jesus, because
Thank
my
you.
mom was like, you're not going on a sleepover. You're not hanging out with your uncles. You're not
Yes,
doing this. Like, I'm thankful that
yes.
she took care of me that way. I really am. But it also caused me long, long years of like, I can't do this. I can't do that. I'm afraid to go here. I'm afraid to do this. I'm afraid.
Like you
And
catch 22, right?
it was way too much. It's too much
Yeah.
fear. There needed
But
to be a
also good
balance.
fear, but also, yeah, right.
Yeah.
There's the balance, right?
There
So you were,
needed to be a balance.
yeah.
There's a healthy amount of fear, but at the same time, I also needed to just be like, okay, it's okay for you to go. And I'm thankful that I got to go with my husband. I felt protected. I felt safe. But yes, there's so many things that we can learn from death, even
Hmm.
though it's something that you are afraid of experiencing. You don't look forward to it. Obviously, you're going to miss your loved ones. Like when my husband had his
Hmm.
heart attack and he actually did die on the table. Like I remember when they took him in the ambulance, and I was like, can I ride in the ambulance with him? And they were like, nope, sorry, ever since COVID, you have to just go on your own. So it was like 1 o'clock in the morning. I had to run back inside the house and, take off my sweats and put on like, or take off my pajamas and put on some sweats. And I got in the car and I just was like in a total panic mode. I didn't know who to call, who's going to be up at 1 in the morning on Saturday. So I called my brother because I knew he would be up. And I was like, Travis just had a heart attack. And I just started bawling. And my brother was like, calm down, calm down. Where are you? What do you need? I was like, I'm in the car. I have to go to the hospital. He's like, okay, take a deep breath, take a deep breath. And you're going to be fine. I don't want you to drive like, in an emotional state because you could get in an accident. He's like, just take a deep breath and everything's going to be fine. He's going to be fine. And like as I'm driving, it was the most foggiest night in August of all,
Of
it
course
was
it was.
so
Right.
foggy and so dark. And I've never been to the hospital. Like we weren't sickly people. So me or him have never been to the hospital. And I just remember driving there and telling God, if my husband is done and you need to take him, I understand.
Mm,
And I want to thank you for everything that I've got to experience with him.
mm,
But if my husband, and I know, and you know that he is not done, that there's so much for him to do in this side, please keep him here. Please let him stay because you know that he is doing great things and he's about to do even greater things. And I'm so thankful that, he didn't go. He did die. He did say that when he closed he said that he was in so much pain that of the
mm.
heart attack that he was like, God, I'm just going to take a rest because this is just so painful. And that he closed his eyes and all of a sudden he was in this like 1970s diner. And there was like, he's like, I just remember there were orange walls. There was nobody there. And I was in a diner. And then within a flash, I was back in the hospital. And so
Oh.
he's kind of disappointed because he's like, where were my guardian angels? Where was my soul family telling me what to do? Where was all the knowledge I needed to experience to bring back to this side? And I was like, well, you just weren't ready to go.
No.
It wasn't your time. You still have more things to do, and that's the thing. There's so much to do, so much life to live, so many things to experience. And even just being in the gratitude, like you said, of I get to sit in the sunlight. I get to
Mm,
read my book outside
mm,
and listen to the
mm.
birds. Like all of that is just so many things that we
And it's
should,
enough,
yeah,
right? Yeah.
we should just experience them, but we're so busy complaining. We're so
Yes.
busy like, oh, it's too hot, or I hate the feeling of sand between my toes, or oh, I just can't stand these gnats or these flies. When it's like, God,
Oh,
people
no.
who are on their deathbed would love to have your health.
They
and
would.
would love to have the things that you have today. The body that you're complaining that's so fat or overweight, a woman that is like, has anorexia would love to just have the mindset of who cares and I can
Right.
eat whatever I want. It's all
Right.
these perspectives that we need to change in the way we live and move through this life.
Yeah. And it starts, I really think it starts with the compassion aspect. That's one thing that I always bring it back to and start with a foundation of with my clients is like the compassion, the narratives that we have adapted from other people. How can we shift it? So rather than doing like, I am so grateful, my life is awesome, this affirmation that our body is like, bullshit, I don't believe it.
Yeah.
Changing that to like some kind of like a statement of neutrality of like honoring where you are, like, man, life is really hard right now, period. But I'm super thankful for this delicious tea that I get to drink.
Yes.
And that's going to rejuvenate me back to life, period. And so shifting that, finding something, the acknowledgement of where you are, and like it's not a state of denial of saying like, life is great when life feels hard, but then finding something, that moment of hope, that little glimmer of hope. And that hope
Mhm.
is compassion. That hope is love, and finding that little like, and that's your ticket to like beelining your way to feeling that comfort here, that connection to your past loved one, that connection to like God in that moment of like just absolute despair. How beautiful it was that both of you separately, without even knowing, were like, look, if this has got to happen, this has got to happen. Okay. And like that release and that like
Mhm.
this that you both did, that's when life said, okay, okay, now you see the lesson. You sat back, you let us kind of like us, meaning our guides, God, spirit, whatever, universe, take over and then gift you
Yeah.
with something else.
Yeah,
How
the moment
beautiful.
you let go of the control that you think you have and you
Yep.
surrender to the unfolding of your life,
Yep.
you're going to be so shocked. Because I always think to myself, like, when I was single and I was living by myself, and I was praying for like a blind man, girl. I was
You're
praying
like,
for a
I'll take
man.
anything,
No, the reason why I wanted a blind man because every man before had cheated on me. So I was like, if I had a blind man, his ass wouldn't be able to cheat on me because he can't see.
Oh,
I know. These were some stupid neurotic thoughts. Okay.
justifications we do. Yeah.
Yeah, I had some neurotic thoughts back then, but I could not ever have ever imagined the husband I have today. I could have never imagined the life I got to lead after I got married. I could have never imagined the places I would have seen, the gifts I would have received, like the friends I would have made. This podcast, I would have never been able to imagine this. So when you could surrender your own thoughts and ideas of what you want in your life, like, and I always tell my clients when you think about manifesting, like, always say this or something better,
Mm.
or this or something to, that's best for my highest self and the highest good of all,
I love that.
because you don't know. Like our knowledge and wisdom is like a grain of sand in the beaches of the world. Like
Yeah.
seriously, we have absolutely no clue what source and the divine are capable of giving us,
Mhm.
and we just need to be open to receiving it and surrendering what we believe we deserve and need. Because if you think about it, some of the times we don't feel like we're deserving of
No.
big gifts,
And
from the
and
universe.
yeah, absolutely. And the acknowledgement that we all have been at that place. Like yes, we need to be let go, release, connected. But you and I both know, and this is a very true thing, is like there's been moments of deep, struggle with that and the moments of really feeling it. So it can fluctuate. And if you
Mhm.
don't feel that every single moment of every single day, that does not mean you're a failure. It does not mean you're a bad human. It does not mean that you're doing something wrong. I'm sure you do, but I know I do still for a fact, like struggle and have those moments. And that's something that I'm always very transparent about is like,
Yeah.
I talk about this stuff, I teach it, but I also apply it. And I also really struggle and I share the struggle to say, like, just because I'm in this place of like coaching or leadership does not mean that I am invalid of having these moments of deep struggle. It's just that these deep struggle moments, I'm like, I'm having this deep struggle moment. This is human and that's okay. And finding again that compassion of like, that's okay. This is okay.
Yeah.
There's
Y-
nothing weird or messed up.
Wherever you are is where you're supposed to
Okay.
be,
Yeah.
right? Wherever you are is where you're supposed to be. And I love this. I think it's Louise Hay who says this, all is well.
Mm,
All is well. Everything is working out for me.
mm.
You
I
know,
love
I love that. Whenever my negative thoughts start to come in, because I am too, like, reprogramming myself from a lot of trauma.
it.
And I have an old program and a huge mother wound, and,
Yeah.
you know, and sometimes it tries to creep in, and I have to tell myself, "Nope, all is well. Everything is working out for me and my highest
Yeah.
good and the highest good of all." And I always have to I have a mantra that I used to say all the time, because I had a lot of, like, I was always in fight or flight mode because of the
Mm,
abuse. And so I would have to tell myself, like, I would have these massive panic attacks out of nowhere. And I'd have to tell myself, nope, I'm safe, I'm sound, I'm divinely protected. I'm safe, I'm sound, I'm divinely protected. And I would continue to say that until that feeling of fear and anxiety started to melt away. And we really do create our own reality and our own truth by the words that we speak and the thoughts that we think. And
mhm.
we just have to become more self-aware of
Yes,
that.
100%. And have the recognition of like, oh, I'm thinking this thing again. Where is this coming from? What is this thought actually trying to tell me? Because sometimes we think a thing, but it's actually something else. And like
Mm.
digging into those layers. But I love that, safe and sound and divinely protected. That's something I'm going to take away from this and start
Yes,
my
girl,
life.
use it, use it.
I
All
know.
right. So
Thank you.
as we wrap up this episode, thank you first of all for being a comeback guest, my very first comeback guest. What would be your nugget of wisdom for anyone who is listening right now that may be on their grieving journey
Yeah.
and really just need that divine attention?
Mm. Well, I mean, the biggest kind of takeaway of all of my journey has been like, again, no way is the right way. Really, as much as you can to release that, but baby step it. We think as a perfectionist or a former perfectionist, I like to say,
Mhm.
someone who struggles with perfectionism is cutting that cord of things having and needing to be big, but also needing to be a certain way. And the real way that we work through that is like one little minute step at a time is all that it takes to cause monumental change. So
Mm.
try to take the biggest thing I have to do. I have to send 10 emails today. Okay, this is an example. Reduce that down to maybe writing half an email. Start there. Tomorrow, maybe write the other half. Next week, hit the send button. The week after that, maybe, and so taking bite-sized pieces to really chew it up and process and digest rather than trying to shove a whole Subway sandwich in your mouth at one time and then be done with it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Oh, I love that advice. Thank you again for being on the podcast.
Thank you so much.
Thank you again for listening to Journey of a Fearless Female. I'm your host, Paola Rosser. If you're looking for a life coach or a spiritual mentor, you can book a free discovery call with me at www.fearlessfemale.com. You can also follow me on Instagram at fearlessfemale_coach, subscribe to my YouTube channel at fearlessfemale, or find me on TikTok. I'm under at paola.rosser. And if you love this episode, make sure you hit subscribe, share it with your friends, and leave a review. I read every single review, and I truly appreciate the time you spend writing it.